This is one of the last things Stephen Hawking was working on before he died. I've got a beautiful recording of him asking this question. He said, the question is there a base reality from which other realities emit, from which they stem? And if there is a simulation, Elon Musk says this very clearly, it's likely if there's a simulation, there's probably not just one, that there would be multiple simulations. We've had think tanks and study groups, and the question is, let's assume that we are in a simulation. Why? What would be the purpose? Well, we know that the people in the simulation are the ones that benefit. We're the ones that are learning, and we're learning about, again, the power of the heart, about power of love, light and dark, war and peace, conflict. So is it possible, and this is where science goes with this, is it possible that we are in a room somewhere modeling for ourselves these possibilities because they represent something that we may be facing in a very real way in that world? Are we living in a world where we're facing a climate crisis that will no longer sustain life? Are we living in a world where the sun is about to explode and go supernova, which has happened to suns? Are we living in a world where conflict has become so great we're about to destroy ourselves? Or has there been a pandemic of a virus? We may be simulating for ourselves. So I've had people say, well, if that's the case, we need to figure this out quickly. So if you're living 100 years, maybe it's too late. When you are in a simulation, 100 years to us could be 20 minutes. We might be living out there, and what to us is 60, 50, 60, 70 years has been five minutes. And if this doesn't work well, then the ancient texts all say, biblical texts, they all say after this lifetime, we do a reevaluation and we try this again. And maybe that's precisely what that is all about. We're learning something about ourselves. Maybe we are learning, we're coming so close on a global level. And if you ask yourself the question from a computer perspective, when does a simulation end? It ends either when it times out, or when there's a glitch in the system, or when there is a data overload. When we detonate a nuclear device, what we're doing is we're creating tremendous amounts of information in the field. And one of the questions that scientists have asked is it possible that we could create so much information in this simulation that we bring the simulation to a halt? Can we overload the system, just like you overload a memory or a hard drive? So these are some of the questions. A war might bring it into the simulation, and this is a lot of the texts have said, and I'm an optimist. I believe those traditions are showing us a potential that could arise if nothing changes. But they all allow for a possibility of a change. In the Hebrew Torah, converting the letters of the Torah into the numbers that they represent so that you have an array of mathematics, using very sophisticated software, they began to do searches for word patterns. And what they found in what is called the Bible code were the word patterns for every event that's ever happened in history. It identified World War II, when it began, when it ended, what countries entered, the years that they entered, who their leaders' names, how did it end, World War I. Not just the 20th century, it identified, back before that. They found every human, if I enter your name in there, your name and your life will come up in the Bible code, as mine do. We do this in the events. And the question is, how can that happen? Because it was written over 3,000 years ago. How can a 3,000-year-old text know about what's happening if that 3,000-year-old text, what it says is that all that is, all that will ever be, and all that has been is encoded into this text. It is essentially a matrix of possibilities for our simulation. Now, the reason I'm sharing this is because in the simulation, every time it shows something frightening, atomic holocaust, pandemic, world war, anything like that, every time you see that, right next to it, there's a question: will you change it? Will you change it? And what it means is that nothing's set in stone. We have potentials that we may experience, and I believe that one of the things we're learning is we have the ability to choose, what some people call free will. I think that free will exists within a boundary that's so big we'll never see that boundary. We perceive free will. I think there are bounds to the free will. But it always says, will you change it? And to me, that's very encouraging, because who or whatever left us this array of information, this this manual, this matrix of information, acknowledged that every dark moment in our lives that we see in this Bible code, in this matrix, does not need to pass. That we have the ability to change that, but we have to choose. And that's what we're doing right now. We're choosing.